Welcome back to Raised by Giants discussion. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you guys and any moderators and channel members out there. Today we are taking a deep dive into UFOs with returning guest and co-host Ryan Gable. But a reminder that super chats and super stickers are available in PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description as well and are a great way to help support the show. Couldn't do this without your guys' support, and channel memberships are available as well and are a fantastic way to help support the show monthly. And a huge thank you to everyone that has helped support the show thus far. Really appreciate you guys. So this evening we have with us author, veteran radio personality, and producer of the show, The Secret Teachings, at Ground Zero Radio, Ryan Gable. Welcome back, my friend. How are you doing?
Good, Ryder. Thank you for having me back, as always.
Yes, sir. We have a lot to dig into today. AARO just released a new historical record report that we actually covered. How long ago was it? Like a couple of months ago on Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, and that one of his last things from AARO was to do a historical record report and present that. But before we dive into that, let people know what you got going on, Ryan. You've been doing a lot of work, and you recently just finished up a new book. So let the audience know all about that.
Yeah, over 14 years of radio, I've accumulated all of my occult knowledge into a single book. It's about 600 plus pages, 7.5 by 9.2, I believe, is the size. So it's bigger than a standard 6 by 9. And it is hundreds and hundreds of pages, hundreds and hundreds of photos of everything occult and everything esoteric, reconciling both the white and baneful or black magic and the things that go along with those. I mean, everything from sigils and talismans to something such as looking at the origins of Armageddon and the apocalypse and what that means across cultures. It's a really good combination of a lot of things. I think people would have really enjoyed. It's called Occult Arcana. It's available on my website, thesecretteachings.info. And it did take me a month to rewrite the entire thing. A lot of stress.
Yeah, you've been super busy with that. Does the book cover Ascension at all? Because Ascension is like this weird freaking thing that the New Age community always talks about, and always believe that Ascension was like after death ascension. Like they're advocating for a rapture.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. I actually mentioned that I don't do anything political or opinionated in the book. Everything is referenced with ancient texts, etc. But you're totally right. The New Age movement, or whatever you choose to call it, they do believe in a rapture, and that is their ascension. And it's interesting. I do talk about ascension in the book, as a matter of fact, because the Great Pyramid of Giza, or Khufu, was actually called the temple or the place of ascension on the plateau. But by ascension, they meant when someone would go into the mystery schools, they would go into seclusion within the temple. They'd go through the trials that would represent the ups and downs of life. So crawling through tight spaces, swimming through dark water, maybe there's crocodiles in it, things like that. And then you'd be in the tomb for 3 days and then resurrected with the grip of the lion's paw, like Christ Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. But then you would ascend the earthly plane and you would greet the rising sun in the east. That's why a lot of temples are oriented east-west, because of the sun, including the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City. So you're right. It's funny, but that term ascension, which actually comes from the ancient world, representing man's attempt to overcome his beast-style nature, like Mithra slaying the bull or the killing of the Minotaur, etc. That's what it actually means, to overcome beast-style desires and your beast-style nature. And I don't know what it's turned into today, Ryder. It's turned into some kind of cult of physical ascension and UFOs, but yeah, that's what it is.
What, you don't want to ascend into the fifth dimension, bro? Come on now, dog.
Well, no, I was looking for the sixth dimension. I was gonna go one up.
Yeah, you got to skip some levels. You got to skip right into the fifth, into the sixth.
We got that Game Shark, the cheat code.
Dude, I used to hack Pokemon back in the day, like hardcore. I used to have this Game Shark, and I would just whip everyone's ass like a Pokemon that I would play with all the time. And they're like, "How are these Pokemon so strong?" And I was like, "I'll never tell you."
Look at those rare candies going. I remember that. A couple hundred rare candies.
Well, there was this cheat code where if you just went out and beat one Pokemon in the wild, it would automatically level up your Pokemon to level 100. So,
Oh my God, I didn't know that cheat code.
yeah, unbelievable. It was a really rare cheat code. Okay, so you probably wouldn't have had access to it. You had to been in you would had to been in the sixth dimension
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
access to that cheat code. Now, I just recently watched Dune 2, and I thought that the symbolism within Dune 2 was really spot on, like the religious symbolism of what actually could and quite possibly have happened to Christ. It's kind of like Paul is like this Christ figure, and he takes this elixir, which they what do they call it in the movie?
It's called the water of life.
The water of life, and then he like presumably dies, and then he's resurrected. Is that what you've kind of found researching and looking through history, that that's more than likely what it was? Because there's been several people that's done a lot of research into the Bible, and they think that this is very similar to what happened to Christ. Like he took this elixir and he died for 3 days, and then he was resurrected.
Yeah, you find that same motif. I mean, if you've read Joseph Campbell, I've actually not read a lot of Carl Jung. I've only read his UFO work. I've not read a lot of Carl Jung, but people tell me you got to read Jung. You got to read Jung. So I do like Carl Jung. I just need to read more of his stuff. But Joseph Campbell is one of my favorites, and he talks a lot about this kind of stuff. But I didn't discover that through Joseph Campbell or Carl Jung. I actually discovered it more so through Manly P. Hall and a couple of other, I'd say, more obscure writers and authors and books. But it's a motif that you find if you just read standard mythology. It's the dying god myth. It's the death and resurrection of Bacchus, Dionysus, which is the Greek and Roman. It's the death and resurrection of Balder. The death and resurrection of Christ is found in virtually every single culture. In some cultures, it's actually a female. In Japan, it's a female, Amaterasu, who I might have mentioned on the show before, one of my favorite goddesses, one of my personal favorite stories. But you find that story everywhere. Basically, it's the dark night of the soul. It's a psychological transformation, but it's also a physical drama that is played out in the mystery schools of antiquity, whether that's in Greece or Egypt, of course, in Rome as well. The cult of Mithras, they would go into sacred caves and they would perform rituals and have resurrections. And so, yeah, if you read the Bible and the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead, it's actually what the same terminology was used by the priests in Egypt. They would go into the coffin room, the sarcophagus room, and they would raise an initiate from the dead after 3 days by saying, whatever your name was, Ryder, come forth. That's the exact same term that Jesus uses, Lazarus, come forth. And there's actually a couple of interesting theories about Jesus in regard to what you're asking, is that Jesus was certainly a real person and certainly hated by the Roman establishment, largely because what he was teaching people, metaphorically speaking, was the mystery schools, which, especially at that time, 2,000 years ago, it was punishable by death if you revealed the secrets. Now, maybe not so much today. People talk about Freemasonry and how, there's a death pact, and there actually is. There used to be in the secret societies, and they would kill you if you revealed their secrets. But in the case of Jesus 2,000 years ago, he's going around teaching people these things, teaching that the state is not God, that God is internal. The Bible even says that, right? The kingdom of heaven is within you. It says that in the Bible. So you don't need the state to dictate your life. You don't need the state to help you obtain some sort of spiritual realization. You can do all those things yourself. And someone who is aware of that can heal the sick, people that are sick with the pollution of, let's say, the pollution of oppression and animal desires and things of that nature. You can heal the lame and the deaf and the blind, people that don't see the truth, people that don't hear the truth. It's metaphoric, right? So the bottom line, and to answer your question very directly, yes, what Paul takes in the movie, the water of life, is actually almost identical, especially with the desert on Arrakis, and everything is kind of, if you watch the movie, they kind of make it's kind of Egyptian iconography. And so if you watch Paul, he goes into this suspended state of animation where they can't detect his vitals, and then he's resurrected and brought back to life, and he becomes the Messiah, which is precisely what we find all throughout the ancient world. In Egypt, as a matter of fact, they use something called the blue water lily or the blue lotus, which is identical to the blue water of life in the movie. In other places, they might have called it peyote in the American Southwest, ayahuasca in South America, poppy in Greece. Poppy was very popular. But probably the most famous of all outside of ayahuasca is ergot, which is what the Greeks used. And that was a purplish, bluish fungus that grew on, still does, it grows on certain crops. And they would take that and they would prepare it, and then they would give it to an initiate, and they'd have this out of body type ayahuasca type experience. So yes, that is all. Frank Herbert wrote those books. He pulled on and drew from all that mythology, all those archetypes, and he did that way before George Lucas ever wrote Star Wars, which is even more incredible when you think about it.
Isn't it said that ergot poisoning was somehow responsible for some of the Salem witch trial stuff?
You know what? I've heard that. I don't know anything about it personally, but I've heard that before. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that was hysteria, public hysteria. I don't think it had anything to do with drugs, but there is a direct connection in terms of like witchcraft in general throughout Europe and the use of certain herbs and plants to induce states of hallucination, where women in particular, but men too, thought that they were literally communing with the devil at a black mass. Although if you study the black mass, which I actually wrote about this in that book too, I just wrote Occult Arcana, most of the things we think about the black mass, everything from communing with the actual devil to big orgies and big feasts and things like that. It was all really the creation of the church. It really wasn't something that witches were literally engaged in. And in fact, if anything, it would have been the ideas that the church put forward were actually things that maybe later witches actually decided in rebellion, let's actually do these things because this is what the church doesn't want. So the church actually created the black mass ultimately, but that's another story.
Yeah, them thinking that they're already doing it, so they're like, "Oh, screw it, let's just go ahead and do it, even though we're not doing it."
Yeah, and they used to come in the middle of the night to grab these women out of their beds, claiming that they were witches, which is ironic because they would say that the women would go to the black mass at night. They'd call these midnight dames or the night rides. So the women would go to the mass, but it was actually the church coming to take women in the middle of the night to trial or to lock them up for witchcraft. Kind of ironic.
Well, isn't it kind of posturized that witches were sort of like they didn't really have like magical powers, or like they weren't really practicing witchcraft? It was that they had a psychedelic substance, and they would give it to men unknowingly, and that's
That's
how
true. Yes.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was just
No,
saying.
I was just that's why they say stay away from the witches. Don't go out into the forest and get near the witches, or go into their house, because they're going to poison you. But it's not really poison. It's like a psychedelic experience. I mean, I'm sure
Plants.
some people would think that they were dying if they unknowingly took hallucinogenics. Like Sidney Gottlieb freaking gave LSD to some of his CIA people unknowingly. He put it in their drinks, and one of them went crazy and like ended up killing themselves.
That's how the Arab assassins were manipulated into killing people. You ever hear those stories or read about those stories?
Mm.
Oh, this is you'd find this fascinating. I did not have this in my book. I should have put this in my book actually, now that I think about it. But the assassins would be manipulated. They'd be given psychedelics and other sorts of substances that would make them hallucinate as if they had gone to heaven or paradise or something to that effect. And then they would be told that you can return to this beautiful place if you go and do our work for us, go and kill the people that we need you to kill, and then we'll give you this paradise back. You can go to this heavenly paradise again. So they were actually manipulated using psychedelics and hallucinogens to go out and commit those murders.
Wow, that's really interesting. It kind of reminds me of Repo Man. Did you see the remake of
No, I have
Repo
not.
Man?
No.
Well, it's basically that sort of same thing, but you find out like halfway, well, at the end of the movie, that he actually died, and he was in like some weird alternate. He was in like a coma, and then they had this thing like hooked up to his brain, making him believe that he's in like paradise.
Oh, interesting. That's kind of like the yeah, it is. I guess it is like Repo Man. Then it kind of reminds me of that X-Files episode with the big mushrooms, where they're in the underground. Mulder and Scully are in like an underground cave or something, and there's that slime over top of them, and it's making them hallucinate and see things that's not there.
Yes, very interesting stuff. So,
And in relation to UFOs, Ryder, to bring this to UFOs, if you think about little green men, those little green men are the little green plant spirits. Those little plant spirits are the things that communicated with our ancestors, or we did through them, through the plants, that gave us knowledge of medicine, gave us knowledge of maybe how to brew beer, because it comes from crops, right? And so those are the things that ancient alien proponents suggest. The aliens came down and gave us this knowledge of medicine and gave us this knowledge of how to make beer, famously in Sumeria. But if you think about it from the context of these types of substances like an ergot, ayahuasca, etc., it's really the little tiny spirits that inhabit the plants, or the green men, the little green men, sometimes little green women, little fairies, that impart to us knowledge. And that usually happens when we're in a secluded place. We get abducted by these spirits. They take us into their world. We return and we have this knowledge that we get from the plant realm. And that is the UFO story. It's the shaman's journey.
Yes. Yes, it's there is a huge connection there between fairies and goblin lore and psychedelic use. I mean, I've said since the beginning that majority of these alien contactee people are on some form of psychedelic. They're taking LSD, mushrooms, ayahuasca, and they're leaving that detail out, right? And then they wonder why, whenever they do all these courses, teaching people, how to contact the aliens and the Galactic Federation and all that, and all the people are wondering, well, why haven't I been contacted by extraterrestrials? Well, they left out the most important part, was that they were on LSD or mushrooms or some sort of psychedelic drug.
Before the aliens contact you, you have to contact your local drug dealer. Then the aliens will make contact. It's funny you say that, because you ever seen that meme on social media about all these different flying saucers, and it says all these flying saucers at this date, 1800s, 1900s, were seen through this powerful telescope, and it's like weed or something. It's like some marijuana. But I see that and I think, okay, that's funny, but at the same time, it's also like you're still seeing something, you're still having an experience. So just because someone's on a substance like that doesn't mean that because they're hallucinating, what they're seeing is not real per se. Like, it's still real to the mind, and you're still having an experience that can transform you. That doesn't mean I think people should go do it, but it doesn't mean that I think, because a lot of these people are taking those kinds of substances, that we should totally dismiss what they're seeing, because what they're seeing has shaped all of human history and probably is the basis for all world religions. I mean, if you read Revelation, St. John was on some mushrooms, because that is a very, very wild story. And St. John is absolutely hallucinating through that whole thing when he goes up into heaven and sees the heavenly hosts. He's on something.
Is it St. John that always carries around an X? Like a cross? Like a cross that's like an X?
You're thinking of, the keys of St. Peter, maybe?
It might have been Peter. It might have been St. Peter. I went to Cincinnati Art Museum whenever I was on my travels, and I can't remember if it was St. Peter or St. John. It probably was St. Peter, but they had like a lot of art, and they were like, one of the saints is always depicted carrying like an X, like a cross that's like in an X.
Usually, I mean, if you turn any cross to the side, it becomes an X, right? But usually I'm thinking Saint Peter, because he has the gold and silver key. One is the key of heaven, the gold key, and one is the key of earth, the silver key, and he's the guardian of those keys.
Yeah. I didn't really know the significance, because they don't really tell you in art museums. They just give you a little description of
some primitive person painted this, even though it's highly sophisticated.
Yeah, it's really incredible. But I think that people should just be, if that's the case and they are taking these psychedelics to have these experiences, they should just be forthcoming about it, right? They should be like, oh, hey, listen, I just took a bunch of psychedelics and this is my experience.
But you know what?
But I think that they think that it's going to discredit their entire thing, which I guess it depends on who you're talking to, if it really does or not. So, but I think that they should just be straightforward about what they did and how they came in contact with these beings, because then because whenever you don't disclose that information, it's almost like you're deceiving people.
Well, I don't think it's almost like it is deceiving people. Yeah, you're definitely deceiving people. But also, when you look at, I don't know what the percentage is of the population. It's been estimated in some studies to be like 2%, maybe 1%, 2%. So, a handful of people in the United States and around the world, I'm sure if you took the same studies or same surveys, people do produce excess DMT. Plus, when you consume animals, I don't know for sure, but I've read studies where you can actually absorb the DMT from the animals, depending on what part of the animal you're eating. And I've even heard that about plants. So whether you're vegetarian, vegan, or you eat meat, regardless, you're eating something like that can, I guess, increase and contribute to the DMT that your body has produced already. And if you get too much of that, you might not have to actively search for those substances. You can just actively see and hear things that otherwise maybe people can't see or hear. So maybe maybe that genuinely is happening to some people. They feel like they've been abducted and they're not on drugs, but they, in a sense, they would be like if you did actively take DMT, except your body's just producing more of it and you're having this experience. So I guess that's also possible. But then so is I had a guy tell me at that conference in Vegas I went to, the one where the security assaulted me at the behest of Jimmy Church. I had a guy tell me that Corey Goode, even though he made up all the stories, he didn't make them up because he really believed them. So the fact that he believed them means that he didn't make them up. They're really true to him. And I mean, that's delusional, but based on that argument, some people really truly believe it so strongly that it does become their reality, and you cannot convince them consciously otherwise too.
That's right. That's the egregoric reality that
Yes.
you've done many shows on, that I've talked about. I think we even did a show together on
You came on Ground Zero. Yeah.
Ground Zero, and talked about it. I mean,
that woman did not like your comments on Stephen Greer. She said he had all the proof.
She didn't even let me get a word in edgewise. I was like, well, you didn't give me time to say what I was going to say. She just hung up the call.
Yeah, one of us asked her, I said, well, if he has all the evidence, what evidence does he have? Give me a piece of evidence that he has. Well, that's not the point. No, it is the point, because that's the point you brought up. So what evidence does he have? She couldn't answer that question. She hung up.
Yeah, it's wild. The ideologies and the egregoric type of reality that's been created surrounding this kind of phenomenon is unbelievable, and it's cemented into everyone's consciousness. And like what I've been looking into is like the different words and the multiple meanings of different words now. Like you have
like etymology.
Well, not so much etymology, but like whenever people use these buzzwords all the time within the community. They use like crash retrieval, they use fake alien invasion, or
EBE.
alien invasion, or a national security threat, and stuff like that, when really all of those have like double meanings. But the problem is that the public that is listening to it has the perception that it means what they mean in the context of the community.
So that it means aliens when it probably means like down Soviet planes or satellites.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. You're right about that.
Yeah, crash retrieval. That can be anything. It can be an Air Force vessel. It could be a missing airplane. Aliens could be something completely different. You just add a word in front of aliens and it becomes something completely different. Just add illegal in front of it and then it turns into a completely different meaning. Then you got national security threat, which I believe national security threat means something completely different than what the community has taken it to mean. National security threat is it's not because aliens are in our airspace or that extraterrestrials are invading us or going to attack us. It's that it's our technology. And if another country finds out that it's our technology, then we're exposed. That's the national security threat. It's not national security threat because they're invading our airspace or they're going to attack us sometime in the future. So all these different kind of buzzwords aren't necessarily, it's a deception in a few different ways, but they aren't necessarily meaning what people think that they actually mean.
I've noticed that about so many different subjects over my 14 years of radio. I've noticed that in the health field. I've noticed that in ufology and everything in between. You're very, very right about that, Ryder. Especially because when I first started reading about, aliens, you listen, or UFOs, you listen and you read the stuff of the experts, the classical names on the subject, and some really good researchers and some that are kind of, I think, con artists now that I've learned. But you do read those kinds of words. You hear it all the time. The reason the government can't disclose this is because it's a national security threat if they do disclose it. And that must mean that the oil companies don't want us to find out about the UFOs and the unlimited energy. And it's maybe a theory that somebody had at one point, like someone like a Stanton Friedman said something, and I didn't dislike him, but he says something, or Von Daniken says something, or maybe Jim Marrs wrote something, and even if they're sincere about it, it's like a theory or a one idea that was mentioned on the Art Bell show 30 years ago, or it was something that was in a book 20 years ago, and then it becomes the hallmark, this cornerstone of the entire community, and people build these houses on top of this sand, which is just a theory that someone proposed on a late night radio show in 1993. That's usually what happens as far as I can see. So that's a good point. I've never talked much about that, but I like that point. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I've really just discovered, because I was talking to Rick Doty about it as well, and I was like, hey man, this stuff doesn't mean what people think that it means. Like, it either has an ulterior meaning, a different kind of meaning, or it doesn't mean what people think that it means at all. It's something completely different. And
context matters.
Yeah. So let's jump into this historical AARO record report that just came out. Hold on, I'm going to pull it up on the screen here in just a second.
Okay.
Because this was really the last thing that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick's from AARO, this was his last thing to do before he left the AARO Department of the Defense Intelligence Agency. So this was published on March 6th, 2024, this year. It is the Department of Defense All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office report on the historical record of United States government involvement with unidentified anomalous phenomenon, UAP Volume 1. So this is just Volume 1. I'm guessing that there's going to be a second volume that's going to come out in the near future. This is all the contents. We're not going to read all this. I just want to get to some of it here. So Section 1, Introduction. This report represents Volume 1 of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office's AARO Historical Record Report, which reviews the record of the United States government pertaining to unidentified anomalous phenomenon, UAP. In completing this report, AARO reviewed all official USG investigatory efforts since 1945, researched classified and unclassified archives, conducted approximately 30 interviews, and partnered with controlled and special access program oversight. Representatively, AARO will publish Volume 2 in accordance with the date established in Section 6802 of the National Defense Authorization Act for the year of 2023. Volume 2 will provide analysis of information acquired by AARO after the date of publication of Volume 1. So this gets into, they start here with this, because this is really kind of in response to Dave Grush and his congressional testimony, because a lot of things that he talked about in the congressional testimony, his big complaint to Congress was that there wasn't any oversight to a lot of these reverse engineered technology. There wasn't any congressional oversight. And the first point that they make in this document is this is the first bullet point. It says UAP non-disclosure agreements, NDA. AARO has found no evidence of any authentic UAP-related NDA or any other evidence threatening death or violence for disclosing
interesting
UAP information.
That's interesting. And that's kind of reminds me of that Sean Kirkpatrick article that we talked about on the show about, a month and a half, 2 months ago, where he talked about how they opened up the doors for anybody to come in and present evidence. Now, I'm not saying I trust the government as a collective entity or as individual agencies or groups at all, but in opening the door for people to come forward, I mean, even people like Jeremy Corbell, who keeps saying he has all this evidence, all this evidence, all this evidence, and he never comes forward and presents anything either. And it's just like it's all, I did a show one time called the UFO Carrot and Stick. and it was, instead of a carrot on a stick and a string, it was a UFO and just leading somebody along with a UFO. That's what this all sounds like to me. And I don't necessarily trust what the government tells me, but I do not see evidence that I kind of agree with that first line of this report, because I just don't see any evidence to the contrary either. If there was, you would feel like it would be very obvious and you wouldn't have to jump through hoops and decode messages to find it.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So the second point here, second bulletin, is a CIA official allegedly managed UAP experimentation. The named former CIA official was not involved in the movement of extraterrestrial technology. The same former CIA officer signed a memo rejecting the claim made by the interviewees that he managed a movement of the experimentation of off-world technology. Now, I'm not 100% sure here, but this sounds like somebody within the community. It doesn't give the name of this person, so I can't really say who it is because I don't want to, get it wrong. But you just read between the lines. I mean, who are some of the biggest proponents of disclosure and a part of the UFO movement?
Do you remember what I think it was Bob Lazar said? I mentioned this to you one time. I found it. It was in Alien Agenda by Jim Marrs, and he had a section. He's talking about Bob Lazar's experience or supposed experiences. And I think it was Bob Lazar who was even quoted saying that he wasn't sure what he had seen because he thought that maybe the people in charge, wherever he was supposedly working, that they were actually trying to get people like him to see things that they wanted him to see, so that he would spread this false or this fake message. And I think he had said he wasn't even sure at one point of what he had, which is almost identical to the term they said gospel was the term they used. They said spread the gospel in that 1953 Robertson panel report. They need to infiltrate groups and get people that are interested in this involved so they can go out and, quote, spread the gospel of the UFO message. But that was an intelligence and military concept to get this information spread to confuse people. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that about Bob Lazar because I thought that's important, because I think at one point he even said that he wasn't sure what he saw and he thought they might be messing with him.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's possible that Bob Lazar was showing some kind of technology and then they just let him run with the myth.
Yep, that's probably what it was. Go ahead.
Yeah. Third one is alleged UAP intelligence community document. I'm not sure if this is the Wilson document or a different document, because again, they're not telling you what these things are. An alleged 1961 special national intelligence estimate that was leaked to online sources and suggests the extraterrestrial nature of UFOs is inauthentic. I mean, there's been a lot of fake documents that's ran around supposedly claiming that that extraterrestrials are involved with the government. I mean, Paul Benowitz wrote a letter to Harrison Schmitt saying that extraterrestrials signed a contract with the military to create this base in New Mexico. So there's a bunch of fake documents running around.
The Eisenhower story, classic.
Yeah, the Eisenhower signed a contract with the extraterrestrials for technology.
Yeah, can I ask you one question? I understand it can be considered for some people suspicious if the president in the middle of the night has to go get a root canal. I think that's what he said. They said that he had to go get, but I don't know how, and maybe it was suspicious. Maybe they had to move him for some undisclosed reason. They wouldn't tell the public that anyway. There might have been some threat to his life. Who knows? But why that becomes aliens is a pretty big jump, even for me. I don't get it. Like, they could have moved him for any reason in the middle of the night, but I don't know how. Well, he had to get an emergency dental surgery. That means he went to meet with aliens. I don't see how you make that jump, but.
Well, that really got regurgitated from Paul Benowitz by Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper was one of the original people that started that entire theory, and he got the tidbit of information from Paul Benowitz that was getting all the information from NSA agents that he thought were extraterrestrials.
Pumping his computer full of the UFO myth.
Yep. And then he went out and spread all that mis and disinformation to everyone in the community. And then Bill Cooper jumped on that bandwagon, and then he just changed it slightly. He was like, "Oh well, uh, now it's not just the military that signed the contract. I'm going to add in that it was Dwight Eisenhower that signed the contract." It just changed it up just a little bit. Aliens present aliens present during a DoD technology test. AARO reviewed information related to an account of an interviewee overhearing a conversation about a technology test at a military base where aliens allegedly were observing, and AARO judges that the interviewee misunderstood the conversation. See, a lot of this stuff just surrounds military bases, military technology. Like common sense tells you that it's the military. Like I don't understand what's going on here.
What gets me there is that it's another person. It's like UFO thrift shopping again. It's another person who's getting second or third hand accounts. In this case, it's not even necessarily a second or third hand account. You're overhearing a conversation that someone else is having, and you don't know anything about that, but you interpret it as it must have been aliens from another planet or dimension watching some military test. I mean, maybe they were doing a test on the border and there were illegal aliens they're watching, and it could have been something as simple as that too. I don't discount the alien narrative or the UFO narrative in the sense that there are bizarre phenomena that we don't know, and it might be plasma, it might be a lot of things. It probably is a lot of different things, and some things might be interdimensional. We don't know. Neither does the government officially, but that kind of a piece of evidence is not really evidence to me. That's you overhearing a conversation that someone else is having. You could walk into any conversation, even if you knew what they were talking about, and walk in at the wrong moment and you have no context, for what's happening. It's like if you're a kid watching a movie and there's a sex scene, and that's when your parents walk in and they think you're watching porn. It's like, no, it's the Titanic. It's kind of like that. There's got to be context for the conversation. I don't know, man. Did someone they're just walking by and they hear someone said aliens, and they're like, oh, they must be talking about aliens watching a secret military program, and then they just run with that? You can't get more evidence or something? I don't know.
It kind of sounds to be that way, which is an incredible coincidence that all these people are just. That's what a lot of it seems like it is like overhearing other military people talking about it that aren't directly a part of the conversation.
Yes, and I would think that if that information were really classified and wasn't known to a lot of people, including, let's say, like in the X-Files, even the commander of Area 51 asked Mulder if aliens are real because he didn't even know. Nobody knew, even at Area 51. If it really was that classified, need to know, I would doubt that there would be random people hanging out on a military base on lunch, just having a conversation about these aliens. That seems like itself a breach of national security. But what do I know?
Next one is the claim that a military officer touched an off-world craft, which this, again, I'm not for sure. We can only speculate on what these cases are. It sounds like the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Yeah, if they touch the object.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. An interviewee claimed that a named former military officer explained in detail how he physically touched an extraterrestrial spacecraft is inaccurate. The claim was denied on the record by the named former officer, who recounted the story of when he touched the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter that could have been misconstrued by the interviewee. Through the named former officer does not recall having this conversation with the interviewee. Not sure if that's the Rendlesham Forest incident or not, but it's pretty similar.
Close to it.
Yeah.
Similar to it, yeah.
Test of off-world technology. An interviewee claimed that he witnessed what he believed to be the testing of an extraterrestrial technology at USG facility. Almost certainly was an observation of an authentic non-UAP related technology test that strongly correlated in time, location, and description provided by the interviewee's account. Which that one there just really summarizes almost everything. Summarizes the entire phenomenon. People are seeing authentic, but not related to UAPs or extraterrestrial technology that the military are testing, that they're misidentifying and mistakenly calling UFOs.
I want to tell you something about that real quick. I was at the gym about a month ago before I started working on this new book, and there was a guy from the military base here in Tucson. We have Raytheon here as well, but it was Motham Davis, and he was talking to some guy in the locker room about how he was stationed temporarily out at Nellis, and I was so close to just kind of asking him. I was joking around like, "Hey, so what did they tell you about aliens out there at Nellis?" But as I was thinking that, I thought, in all seriousness, I think a lot of people in the UFO community feel like, well, if you're a soldier and you were stationed at Nellis or any military base for that matter, you would know about the aliens. And it's like they don't even tell other people who are high level sometimes, depending on what the program is, what tests they're flying, like what planes they're flying. I think the guy that flew the SR-71, they didn't even tell him what it was. They like blindfolded him and put him in the cockpit. And that's a very human craft. I mean, maybe people say it was reverse engineered from alien technology. Okay, whatever. Point is, something humans definitely built. They don't even tell the pilot what the hell he's flying. So I highly doubt that they're going to tell average people at a military base something about aliens if that really were the case. They don't even tell them what's going on with military technology that's very human. I think people really overlook that really important critical detail, Ryder.
They really do, and that just goes to show you the compartmentalization of the military itself. I mean, there's things that are being worked on that only people know bits and pieces of the information. And again, that goes back to the national security threat. That's done for a reason, so that no one person has all the information, so that they can't reveal it to any other country. Foreign or domestic.
So it's fragmented.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it's actually kind of, I never thought of that, but that's kind of ironic then, or maybe not even ironic. That's not the right word. Maybe it's just a pattern then, because if within the national security apparatus, if everything is fragmented naturally so, because you don't want one person having all the information, including even the president for that matter, for plausible deniability, depending on what it is, like the Manhattan Project, then maybe that's why the UFO stories are also so segmented and so fragmented, because you're only getting bits and pieces, and it's not coming from space or another dimension. It's coming from military programs that are fragmented to keep the public from knowing, or to keep other people in other countries from knowing what's actually being developed and worked on and tested. Does that make sense? I never thought of that, but maybe that's why UFOs are so fragmented, because it's all coming from that national security border.
That's exactly right. And that's the whole buzzword of the national security threat. That's why they call it a national security threat.
Can I read to you a very short sentence from Bob Lazar?
Yes.
I found it. I went and pulled my Alien Agenda book by Jim Marrs, and this is in the if you have a copy of this book, it's on page 181. So it says, and this is Jim Marrs writing about Bob Lazar, and he's basically documenting the mythology of everything in this book. I think it's one of the better alien books. But he says that Lazar says this. Lazar said he was walking, and he was, quote, looking down and talking to this guy that he saw was looking down and talking to something small with long arms. This is what Lazar said he saw, something small with long arms that was talking to some human. And Lazar noted, he said, I don't know what it is, because, quote, they play so many mind games there. Maybe they stuck a doll in front of these guys and made me walk by it and look at it just to see what my reaction would be. But when we did turn around to do something and walk back, it was gone and the two guys were gone. So I don't know what I saw. Just in one instance, here's Lazar even saying they play all these mind games. I don't know what I saw. They could have put a doll there, not an alien. So that's Lazar saying that. No, if I interviewed Lazar, if I was Corbell, I'd be asking him this question. Don't you think that most of your story couldn't be summarized by this account? You've acknowledged that a lot of this stuff is possibly fake and they play mind games. What makes you think that anything else you saw was real? I don't know. I think that's important. If you ever get to have Bob Lazar on, ask him that question because nobody else is.
No one talks to Bob Lazar besides Joe Rogan, Jeremy Corbell, and George Knapp. So I don't think he'll never be on the show.
Yeah.
But
I learned from that Bob Lazar documentary that Jeremy Corbell has Bob Lazar and George Knapp's phone number. That's all I learned from that documentary. He called him a bunch.
Let me FaceTime Bob Lazar real quick. We'll bring him in real quick through the internet, and you guys can film the computer, and we'll see him that way.
Yeah,
we don't have the budget to actually fly Bob Lazar into the filming of this.
And plus, you don't have special access like Jeremy Corbell does. So
yeah, only they can talk to the famous Bob Lazar. But this next one, we have UAP disclosure study. Interviewees claim that between 2004 and 2007, the White House requested a research institute in Virginia study the theoretical societal impacts of disclosing that UAP are extraterrestrial in origin. AARO confirmed the study was conducted, but it was not requested by the White House. Next one is named companies allegedly experimenting on alien technology. AARO has found no evidence that U.S. companies ever possessed off-world technology. The executive scientists and chief technology officers of the companies named by interviewees met with the director of AARO and denied on record that they have ever recovered, possessed, or engaged in reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology, which they're doing like a little cover here on this one, right? They're adding in extraterrestrial technology when some of the stuff could have been retrieved from archaeological digs, and they found it and then figured out how it worked and then created their own technology based off of what they found. That doesn't make it extraterrestrial; it just makes it really, really old.
yes, and also I think that this has almost been lost in ufology. Maybe it's because people like Jim Mars aren't alive anymore. But the Germans were working on extremely advanced technologies compared to what the rest of the world had. It's really astounding that Germany lost the Second World War when you think about it. I mean, they had programs that were higher than the atomic bomb program, things that were way more classified, like the famous Die Glocke, which probably isn't what we've been told, but there's a lot of theories on it. It was a very classified project. My point is, though, the Germans were developing in the 30s. They had the first CCTV cameras, They had night vision. They were deploying, not widespread, but they had deployed drones on the battlefield, which were relatively new in all of human history. I mean, Tesla basically invented the remote controlled drone in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The Germans were using that in the battlefield in the late 30s, early 40s. They were using magnetic tape, like the first computers, magnetic tape to record things, way ahead of the rest of the world. And there's no doubt about it, they were developing advanced and sophisticated aircraft. I mean, we get our jet engines from the Germans. The Messerschmitt 262 was the first fighter jet. That was German. Everybody else was using propellers. The Germans invented a lot of stuff. So if they were, and it seems to be that they were based on records and schematics that I've seen, that they were working on some sort of advanced, sophisticated flying craft that was, clearly beyond anything that we could imagine. And then something like that did crash and it was recovered, it would have been a foreign, aircraft, foreign technology, or something that we got after the war. We tried to fly it and it crashed. Maybe that was Kecksburg, or it could have been Roswell, whatever the case might be.
Absolutely.
And then it's not extraterrestrial. It's from the fatherland. It's from Deutschland, not from Zeta Reticuli.
Well, I'm willing to contest that Germany did win the war. They lost it in public perception, but on paper they won.
Yeah, and the Nazi ideology won. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what happened when you look at Project Paperclip, and basically just the regrouping of Germany into the United States. I feel like that was an official agreement that was made by the Germans during World War II in the United States. It wasn't they came in and subverted. They created a back door, and they were like, oh well, what if this is a better way to win? what if we just infiltrate the United States instead of taking the United States over? We can just pick up all of our operations from Germany during World War II, and then we can transplant them into the United States.
So
I
the Soviet
guarantee that
Union
was
wanted to do.
that's what the Soviet Union, they got more Germans than the United States did.
If you look at the way our economic system works, it's not capitalist. It's very fascistic. It's a merger of corporations and state. And that's precisely what fascism is. That's what Mussolini defined it as. It's the companies merging with the state. And that's exactly what we have here in the United States. We do not have a capitalist free market society. I mean, even the president of the United States right now has been talking about price controls for things because, inflation. So we have to have price controls. Usually doesn't work out too well for everybody when we have price controls, but who cares about history and how things actually work? Anyway, back to the point of what you're saying.
So we got experimentation on alleged extraterrestrial spacecraft sample. AARO has concluded that a sample from an alleged crashed off-world spacecraft that AARO acquired from a private UAP investigating organization and the U.S. Army in a manufactured territory alloy, and does not represent an off-world technology or possesses any exceptional qualities. The sample is primarily composed of magnesium and zinc. This sounds like the Murray Island incident.
So, and what does it say? Bismuth with other trace elements such as lead. So what you're telling me is it didn't bend and then bend back to its normal shape.
It wasn't magic metal. No.
That wasn't magic metal. Oh my God. I have to ask you, based on that statement in the report, we're going to be going to contact in the desert this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we know what we should do. And this is not a joke. I'm sure you've met or had people come up to you or you've seen it at a conference like Contact where they have evidence of UFOs and they've got like a piece of metal or a rock from their backyard. You ever seen those people? They carry it around in like a cloth case and they're like, I've got real proof of aliens, and they might actually believe it. We should bring something like that. We should bring some scrap metal and some little pieces of rock or concrete, and we could sell it and make a lot of money. What do you think about that?
I think that's a good plan. I mean, we'll just get some weird laminated newspapers, and then we'll sell that as crashed alien technology. That's what the whole Murray Island incident was, where it was just freaking leaflets that the military was trying to get rid of in the ocean.
Why don't we take like some aluminum foil? That's like $1.99 a roll, and we'll just take rolls out, like that big, and laminate them, and then we'll sell them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, $100 a pop. This is real alien metal.
Yeah,
it's laminated.
We'll bend it, and then it'll just go back
because it's laminated. Dude, I'm going to totally do that. I'm going to go get some laminate and some aluminum foil for Contact. Come see the magic metal.
Unbelievable. It's wild that people do that stuff and people fall for it. It's unbelievable.
Hey, I'm getting in the lawn chair inside the sun reflector this year.
Oh yeah, the med bed technology.
Yeah. Dude, I was thinking of you the other day because I watched Prometheus while I was working on an edit of my book, and she gets in the med pod at the end. They only made 12 med pods in the Wayland Corporation. I was thinking, oh my God, the med bed. Someone watched this movie and then just went right to YouTube and made a video. They knew about the med beds.
Med beds are real. They disclosed it in the Prometheus movie.
Yeah.
I actually really liked Prometheus. Supposedly there's a new guy that is going to be creating a new alien movie. It's not Ridley Scott anymore. I wish Ridley Scott would have made Prometheus 2, but he got so much crap for Prometheus that I feel like then he made Alien Covenant.
Covenant sucked, I thought.
Yeah, it was bad. I was like, dude, why didn't you just make Prometheus 2? I thought the concept and the idea of Prometheus was amazing because it had a lot of that religious symbolism throughout it.
Yeah, the whole thing, and from Prometheus stealing fire from the gods and helping mankind to the black goo. But yeah, Covenant was pretty awful.
Michael Fassbender is that guy, the robot in Alien Covenant was just horrible, dude, horrible. But getting ready to wrap up here. So we got this was what was in volume 1, and if people want to read all this, I'll leave the link in the description of this video so that you can read through all of it. It gets into way more details and other things that you can look at. But this volume 1 contains AARO's findings from 1945 to the 31st of October 2023 based on the requirements. And volume 2 will include any findings resulting from interviews and research completed from the 1st of November 2023 to the 15th of April 2024. So this document was basically, that's really wild though. Like they covered all of the sightings and reports and all the investigations from 1945 to 2023, and the next one is just going to be reports and observations and sightings from 2023 to 2024.
Maybe it's because, maybe just because the year, since the year's not up yet, they're going to wait for the whole year and then accumulate that data they have up until 2023, maybe.
But it just shows you how much more popular and egregoric type of sightings that people have had just in the past 2 to 3 years. You know, there's a very tiny portion of people, and now everyone's seeing it. Right? Everyone's seeing a UFO.
Seeing a UFO or being abducted or something to that effect. I wonder if this report will get any mention whatsoever at Contact this year.
Probably not, but I'll bring it up.
Dude, send it to me. I'm going to print it out and bring it. Then you can bring it up with the aluminum foil.
We have this top secret classified document wrapped in the alien craft for protection.
Yeah. The aliens brought you this.
Yeah, wild, dude. But yeah, that's the report, and you know, people are just attacking AARO and saying, "Oh, they've lost all credibility. They don't know what they're talking about. Many people have had these experiences." Blah, 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 blah.
So basically, what you're saying is, when AARO was first formed, everybody was excited, and then when they tell you we don't find anything in our reports, everybody's now they're compromised.
Yep.
Now that you can't trust them because they didn't confirm a bias. Now, if they, on the contrary, if they had said, "Oh, we did find proof of something, alien or otherwise," then there would have been a segment of ufology that would have said, "You can't trust them. They're trying to, what would the word be? They're trying to give credibility to something that's not true, and they're ignoring other reports." There's always going to be someone that's going to complain about the validity of a report like this. So that's why, I mean, from the beginning, I said I don't really trust any of this stuff, and it's not that I don't agree with this particular report, because I do in part, mostly from what you read, but I just don't trust any of it. I don't trust ufologists to give me information. I don't trust the government to give me information. I don't know. I see it more from a symbolic and psychological point of view, especially when you go back to the original flying disc, which was Ra's sunboat in Egypt, or Ashur in Sumeria, Mesopotamia. That's the original flying saucer. It was literally called the flying disc. So this stuff is very, very ancient.
Yep, and people are, all got their panties all up in a bunch because they're not being told what they want to hear, and it doesn't confirm their bias and their preconceived notions of what they think is actually going on. What they're seeing in this document is what they have always said.
Mm-hmm.
There's no change. There's no different. They've always said.
But what about David Grush?
It has nothing to do with extraterrestrials. They've always said that. So it's like, I don't understand what people thought were expecting. Like,
I don't know. To meet a gray face to face, I guess.
Yeah, wheel out the technology. Let's get an extraterrestrial ship on the next congressional hearing.
Yeah, there's a weird. Well, I don't know what it is. By the way, you mentioned ascension earlier. What's the connection between ascension and there's like a blurry line between the New Age groups and the UFO groups? It's like a very blurry line. I can't tell where one starts and one one ends?
Well, some people think that it's going to be an ascension from extraterrestrial craft landing and taking them aboard the craft, and then they're going to go into they're going to be taken off into
It's a
another
cookbook.
planet. Yeah,
Cookbook. Don't get on the craft. It's a cookbook. Go
that's
ahead.
right. That's right. You don't ever get on the craft, and there's another agenda behind it. But that's where a lot of the intersection in between extraterrestrials and ascension is, because even some of the earliest UFO cults, starting with the Seekers cult in 1953, that was like their prediction that the Brotherhood of Light was going to show up and rapture up all the people that were involved in this cult, and that they were going to go to their
Mm.
planet because there was a giant natural disaster happening. Like,
Oh, we've heard that in all of ufology's history about the disasters and needing of genetic material.
and then it gets more extreme with people like the Heaven's Gate cult, where they were like, yeah, and a group of extraterrestrial ships are going to come and abduct everyone, and then they're going to be transformed into a extraterrestrial and the next evolutionary level above human,
But
above the clouds,
I never understood that, because
and that they're going to live forever.
well, that's the important part. That's the eternal life that Christ promises you. Another version, like the rapture. But if you're going to be turned into an extraterrestrial and you're going to live on another dimension, another planet, wouldn't that just make you a terrestrial? It wouldn't make you an extraterrestrial. It's only from a human perspective. I don't see. That's another thing about extraterrestrial. The word, I think, in regard to what you were saying earlier about national security and other words that have these different meanings. Extraterrestrial to a lot of people, I think, it's almost like it's a different species, in the sense that, I'm going to become an elephant. I'm going to become an extraterrestrial. It's like, that's just a term that refers to something that's not from here. It doesn't refer to it like the Hollywood alien. So I think there's another term you can add to the mix. I'm going to be turned into an extraterrestrial. What does that mean? You want to be a reptoid, an insect? I don't know what that means, man. It really blows my mind.
It means that they're going to give up their citizenship and go to a different country. That's what an extraterrestrial means.
There you go.
Extraterrestrial just means extra territory. And guess what's outside of our borders?
Yeah.
Extra territory, extra land. What's to the south of us, right? What's to the north of us? It's land outside of our land. That's all extraterrestrial means.
You know what? That actually, now that you put it that way, I wrote this in my Occult Arcana book too. I talked about the land to the west of Egypt, the land to there's a lot of cultures to the west of whatever ocean. It could have been the Mediterranean. It could have been the Sea of Japan. It could have been anywhere in the world. And usually it was to the west, the land of the dead, because that's where the sun goes down. So where the sun goes down in the west, that's the land of the dead. There's always a mystical land west of whatever the land mass was. And that mystical land was the land of the gods, where the gods would take you and you would be able to live in that other extraterrestrial world. So, I mean, even I'd never thought about that, even, based on that mythos. The UFO narrative is stripped right out of the old ideas of the underworld, which is, I guess, where shamanism comes from anyway. But it's stripped of the old ideas of the underworld, being taken to a mystical land far away that nobody can see unless they have the eyes to see, and they're taken there usually on a boat, a giant flying ship, otherwise known as Charon's boat or Ra's boat or whatever the case is. There's another part of the mythos.
That's what's going on, and I hope people get it, and I hope people realize it, because that's all that it means. That's what extraterrestrial is. That's what extraterrestrial means. We went over the crash retrieval thing. We went over the reverse engineering. The reverse engineering could just mean reverse engineering of some ancient technology or something that they discovered from a really long time ago, hundreds of years ago, or from a different country. A national security threat is if other countries figure out that it's our technology and it's not this extraterrestrial technology that has been this alien technology that people think that it is, and then that exposes us, because there's nothing that you can do about alien technology. There's nothing you can do about visitors from off-world, because they're so much more advanced than us, right? But there is something that you can do about humans and human craft. right? That's why they don't want to let the cat out of the bag. That's why this mythos and this extraterrestrial mythology has taken root, because it serves as the best cover story for real military advanced programs, and more than likely drone operated technology that is not manned, but is probably by now weaponized.
Well, for modern accounts, especially, right?
Yeah. There was a cult, the cult of universal medicine, with this guy, Serge Benhain, I
I've
think
heard
was
that
his name.
name. You might have mentioned him.
He came up with the entire ideology of his cult while taking a dump on
Are
the
you
toilet.
serious? That's
Yeah,
real?
real.
Oh my god. Maybe that's what Chris Carter wrote that, why he wrote that in the X-Files, that one episode.
Yep.
That's funny.
Unbelievable. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for coming on, brother. Really appreciate your time this evening. Can you let people know where to find you and how they can purchase and get your new book?
Yes, as always, The Secret Teachings airs Monday through Friday on groundzero.radio. Then you can find the show in the free archive on Apple, Spreaker, or you can find all those links. It's easier just to go to the website, www.thesecretteachings.info. You'll also find my books on the website, like Occult Arcana. And my other book, I published a new book called Garden of Hallucinations. It's like a super condensed occult arcana with a lot of new stuff, but it has a large chapter on the UFO mythology. So if you're interested in that, that book is available right now, Garden of Hallucinations, at www.thesecretteachings.info. And if you want to contact me, rdgable@yahoo.com. Ryder, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for coming on. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithms. All of the links to Ryan's information will be in the description of this video. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, and we will see you guys next time.